Welcome back to the book of Romans. Again, I'm your teacher, Dr. Benjamin Olson. As we continue on in the book of Romans, we're looking at chapter 1, beginning in verse 18. We've seen so far Paul's introduction, his salutation to the believers there in Rome, and his theme verse of chapter 1, verses 16 and 17, that he's not ashamed of the gospel, for it is the power of God to salvation to everyone who believes, to the Jew first, and also to the Greeks. For in it the righteousness of God is being revealed. That's the important thing. The righteousness of God is being revealed because of faith, through faith. From faith to faith, as is written, the righteous shall live by faith. Because there's a big problem. Beginning in chapter 1, verse 18, Paul gets right to the heart of the matter. He begins chapter 1, verse 18, for because the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men who suppress the truth in unrighteousness. Because what may be known of God is manifest in them, for God has shown it to them. For since the creation of the world, his invisible attributes are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made, even his eternal power and Godhead, so that they are without excuse. Because although they knew God, they did not glorify him as God, nor were they thankful, but became futile in their thoughts, and their foolish hearts were darkened. Professing to be wise, they became fools, and changed the glory of the incorruptible God to an image made like corruptible man, and birds, and four-footed animals, and creeping things. This presents the problem in no uncertain terms. The problem of mankind is that God's wrath is fixed on mankind, particularly his wrath revealed from heaven. That ultimately from the heavens, God declares his righteousness. God declares his justice. He declares his wrath. That the heavens themselves declare the glory of God, and that mankind does not live up to that glory. Let's unpack these verses here. Chapter 1, verse 18, for the wrath of God is revealed. Again, this is in the present tense. It's being actively revealed. This isn't something that was done in the past through the Old Testament. This is something that's happening right now in Paul's day and continues to this day, that we are under the wrath of God. It's revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men. Notice this here, men of mankind, of humankind. But look at here the word all. All means all, and that's all means. Every single human being is under the wrath of God because of two things, ungodliness and unrighteousness. Ultimately, the two ideas are completely fixed together. The ungodliness, i.e., I'm not God. I don't have the righteousness of God. Because I don't have the righteousness of God, his wrath remains on me. This unrighteousness, the inability to do right, to have any right standing before God. This is all unrighteousness, no matter how little or how big. Notice he doesn't distinguish, he doesn't just differentiate between big sins and little sins, between atrocities versus little white lies. It's all ungodliness, all unrighteousness of men who suppress the truth in unrighteousness. The term here, suppress, means to push it down, to conceal it, it's almost like it's in a box and it's trying to get out, and they're sitting on top of the box, pressing it down, in suppressing that truth. The truth of God, not just the truth, but the truth that God's wrath is being revealed, the truth about God. Because notice here, verse 19, because what may be known about God is manifest in them. The word manifest means to demonstrate something, to actually make it known, or to actually make it tangible in the world. Something that is intangible can be seen as tangible because it is manifest in them. For God has shown it to them. Notice this is an act of God. God revealing himself to mankind. What may be known about God is manifest in them. Every single human being has the truth of God. Not just simply that God exists, but there's very important aspects of who God is that are revealed from heaven to mankind. Not just externally from heaven, but also in them. It's manifest in them through their conscience. Look at these two ideas here. Verse 20. For since the creation of the world, notice he starts with the creation of the world. I love how Paul just says, from the creation of the world, what is the one thing that human beings today are denying over and over again? That God did not create. And Paul starts it right away. For since the creation of the world, his invisible attributes, notice here, manifest, things being manifest, being shown as to be tangible, his invisible attributes, those things that you can't see tangibly with your eyes, are being manifested, right? They're being made to be tangible so that we can actually see it and understand it. His invisible attributes are clearly seen. I love Paul's juxtaposition there between invisible and clearly seen. It's like deafening silence, right? It's his invisible attributes are clearly seen. There's that I think Paul actually loves the paradox there of the manifesting of his invisible attributes so that we can clearly see them, being understood by the things that are made. So the creation itself, God made the world so that we could see him, so we could see his attributes, but more specifically, two major attributes of God. It's not all of his attributes that we can see. The two attributes that he describes here, his eternal power and Godhead. I think these are the two important ones that he wants us to understand, because his eternal power, that God is all powerful, omnipotent, because only an omnipotent God could create a world that is so intricate and so vast and so big, a cosmos that stretches beyond what we can even possibly fathom or imagine. Only a God who stands outside of that and is bigger than that and more powerful than that. In other words, in order for God to create a lightning storm, which is so impressive to us, or the aurora borealis, which is so impressive to us, and yet God stands outside of that and above that. He is powerful. The power of God is manifest. We can see it. It's tangible. And his Godhead, his deity. I think here what Paul is trying to say is his sovereignty, that he is in control, that he is the one in charge, that we are ultimately answerable to him. That's the big problem. We are answerable to God, but we have not acknowledged him. He is the one in control, and yet we want to wrest control away from him, so that they are without excuse. There are no excuses for the heathen. There are no excuses for those who've never heard. There's no excuses for those who are in third world countries, the unreached people groups of the world. It doesn't matter. If they are alive and they have a brain, they are without excuse, because they are the ones who are suppressing that truth. They're the ones who are pushing it down. They themselves, their conscience is bearing witness against them. Because although they knew God, notice he says there, they knew God. Not just that they knew about God, they knew God. In their unrighteousness, they've suppressed the truth about God himself. They knew God. They did not glorify him as God. This is the big problem, right? The unrighteousness we're talking about here, the ungodliness that we have, is that we are not giving glory to God. That he is not the one receiving glory. We're trying to wrest it for ourselves. Ultimately, that's the big problem in the book of Romans. That's why the wrath of God remains on us. We did not glorify him as God, nor were we thankful. I love that thanksgiving or thankfulness is like at the heart of Paul's gospel, that we didn't give thanks. It's so human of us to think that we've done things ourselves, that we're the ones in charge. We're the ones who are the ones who are making decisions for ourselves, that we're the sovereign ones. And it's so easy. The very first thing that goes is thanksgiving. The very first thing that goes is a grateful attitude toward this God who's given us life, this God that has manifested himself to us in such grandeur through creation. But they instead became futile in their thoughts, empty, futile, that it's meaningless, that it's empty, that it cannot do anything, it's worthless, futile in their thoughts, and their foolish hearts were darkened. That darkness of sin, that darkness that we've covered up the light of who God is. The only way that the light of God can be extinguished, because God himself cannot be extinguished, is if we eclipse that light with darkness. That we ourselves have to turn away from the light and close our eyes to it. We're suppressing that truth. Their hearts were darkened, right? Professing to be wise, even though they profess that they are wise. And this is, by the way, all human beings profess to be wise, even the foolish ones. By the way, professing yourself to be wise, according to this passage, you are foolish. Because instead of saying, I don't know, but I know one who does, and seeing ultimate authority outside of yourself, like for instance in the scriptures, we see ourselves as the final authority. We see ourselves as the authority of truth. And that, be professing to be wise, we became fools. This is actually an indirect quote of Jeremiah 10:14, that in knowledge they became dull in their hearts. That through knowledge they became dull in their hearts. And that futility in thought, that emptiness of thought, that foolishness. Professing to be wise, they became fools, and exchanged or changed the glory of the incorruptible God, the glorification of God, by declaring that God is the one who is in control and in sovereign over all things, by exchanging that glory of God into an image made like corruptible man and birds and four-footed animals and creeping things. Now, we don't necessarily have the same problem today of the four-footed animals and creeping things and birds that the ancients did, but instead we just go straight for that first one, made like corruptible man. It's been said that it is a poor end of himself, of a man himself. Let me say that again. It is a poor end or goal of a man himself. And that's exactly what most human beings see as their end, is their own desires, their own selfishness, and their own glory. We're going to stop the video right here. We'll head back into verse 24 through 32 in the next video.